These little pieces I do here on YouTube, these videos, they tend to satisfy my brain's urge for real tangible closure, regardless of what the situation is. And I guess that's because I get to take everything I'm feeling at that moment and encapsulate it for my 40-year-old self to dig up. I don't know what I'll do past that point. I guess it's just knowing that I get to put this in a box and make it immortal. Take these feelings right now. At least somewhat anyway. I can make them more immortal than me, I should say. And let's not lie. There's something strangely satisfying about being an observer here. To get to look into the eye of the storm here. I like to go back through the years on YouTube and hear myself smooth out the kinks in my life, seeing how I handled situations back then, and how that's directed and how that's affected me in the present. It's something I don't think I'll ever get tired of. It's a really humbling experience, but I wish I could see this all from the perspective of a fan of mine who's been around for a while, one of you guys who's grown with me, because I'm still growing myself, and I'm pretty sure it's apparent in my videos that I'm still finding my place, whereas most people would wait until all that's taken care of before they start this YouTube shit, and that's why it all seems professional and whatever. Let's get into this because I feel like I'm avoiding the point. It's Monday, July 30th, 2012. At least I think it's Monday. Is it Monday? Yes, it is Monday. I've been putting this video off for a long time because the truth is, I've been putting this whole situation off for a long time. I feel like I'm finally at an at least somewhat stable point in my life, and after 18 years of it, I'm just not ready for some more bullshit to come into it. I haven't had enough time spent being not unstable, so just whatever. I have the nerve to do this right now, and I figure I just needed to get it out of the way. So let's just do this now. I'm on 2 Alpha Brain, which is a cognitive enhancing supplement, and I have 2 joints here. Well, a joint and a blunt that I've rolled. And those are going to help me relax and open up a bit as we progress throughout the night. Also got some water here, and I got my bong packed just in case I actually make it that far. I don't know how many hours we're going to spend here. It's probably going to be a while, so get ready. And I would prefer it if, for those who have access, would go ahead and pause this and do the same. Roll some shit up, or if that's not quite for you, play some video games, or draw a sweet portrait or something like that, I guess. I don't care. I thought I would need some type of format for this, so I have bullet points here in front of me that on this text document to keep me in some type of order. And for comfort reasons, I'm going to be doing this like I did back when I started talking here on YouTube when I was like 13 or 14. It's just gonna be audio, no actual video, since that's how I first started, and it's the most comfortable way to record for me. It's just how I was brought up, I guess. It's gonna be a full, unbiased report, I guess, on my mother, from my perspective, of course, since I only got 18 years of her. I don't want to speak too much on everything before me, since I wasn't around to be talking about any of it here. So for everything up to my existence, I'll only give you what I know to be true from other hopefully reliable sources, in my family primarily. And then I'm going to give you my experience, which is probably, even though I hate to say it, gonna mean I basically cover most of my own life as well, since it was all spent up to this point with her. And that'll just be a good way to put checkpoints throughout this. My mother, she was born December 27th, 1961, and she was adopted by my grandmother, Shelley, who passed away 2 years prior to my mother, 2009, 2010. My grandmother, she was one of Houston's elite. She ran shit down here for a long time, along with her sister, my great aunt Catherine, who's still alive. She's a financial banking number titan thing. Uh, Shelley, alongside my grandfather Larry, also adopted a boy from a separate family than my mother's, and they named my mom Marion and my uncle Elliot. He goes by his middle name Cage, though. Anyway, she grew up with her brother, who I believe is about 2 years younger. And they grew up in a very wealthy part of Houston until their mid to late teenage years, which is good because her biological family is fucking crazy. Is completely composed of drug addicts and alcoholics and criminals and generally negative people. My mom was born as a sociopath herself, meaning she simply lacked the part of her brain that connects you to the human machine. She lacked the ability to truly feel other people's pain and emotions. She wasn't born with that bone in her body. So what she did was the same thing that other non-psychotic sociopaths do, which was develop she developed an extremely believable but nevertheless very artificial mask. And where's my ashtray? Sorry if I just breathed into the mic. And just like a paraplegic who adapts to their wheelchair, she was quickly able to permanently apply this mask. So while you couldn't tell on the surface that she was a sociopath, she really gave zero fucks about you. Now, and I do think there's a reason for this. I never got to know the last name of my biological family or anything about them on my mom's side. Almost anything. I know my mom had a sister who's still alive out there, and I know my mother died fairly recently, within the last 5 years or so. I'm sorry, not my mother, their mother. And other than that tiny little bit, all I know is that they're bad people, and that it's good my mom was taken out of there as soon as she was. She was really connected to her sister. I remember that. She'd get on phone calls with her, and after that, she'd tell me how strange it was that she was so alike them. So I don't know. I guess there's a part of me that's curious to meet them, but at the same time, I'm really not, because I don't want to be able to go, oh, this is the reason I'm the way I am, because I know I'll just find any reason I can to slack. Now, my grandmother, Shelley, the lady who adopted my mother, whenever I refer to someone outside of their actual name, just know that I mean my adopted family. Shelley was a drinker, and from my understanding, it got worse with time, and that steady decline with the alcohol never quite stopped for her. She, like you'll find with my mom, never managed to keep her head above water when it came to her substance addictions. However, she did quit smoking like a fucking pro. My grandmother, I mean. She was a goddamn man about that shit. She was like, all right, I'm going to stop smoking. And this is after like 1,000 years of daily smoking. And that's what she fucking did. Like, because her body was on the older side when she did it, she ended up trading the cigarettes for an oxygen tank that she had to roll around with like a wagon. She literally went so hard that it ended up failing harder. That like her body ended up failing harder afterwards. She quit smoking. It was like she quit smoking at her body. I remember that. It was so hardcore how she quit smoking. So after that, I have no tolerance for people who are like, I can't quit smoking. Because this was like an old ass lady who was like, you know what? I'm just fucking done smoking. And then she stopped smoking. And that's what happened. I mean, it nearly killed her, but that's what happened. It was sad, but I just remember being inspired by that. It was the first, I don't know, she was just one of those rock people. I've always appreciated raw dedication. Pointing at something you want and to be willing to fucking kill yourself to make that happen. I feel like that's the human experience. I don't know. Anyway, my mom's mom, growing up, she had that drinking problem that, as I said, gradually worsened as time progressed. It allowed her to be able to be this super vicious lady to her children, and my mom, she got the worst of it because, frankly, she asked for it. My mom, in her later years of childhood, around my age, I'll say a little bit younger, started she started constantly going out and doing dumb teenager things with her dumb teenager friends that were from the dumb teenager 70s and sneaking out and just the regular dumb teenager drill. It's the regular teenage girl stuff. My grandma was she was super conservative. She was very stern and strict. She was a 60s woman. She was one of those women that's just so into just being. She was one of those women that was really into being the image of that aggressively and intimidatingly strong and independent woman. She didn't, from my understanding, she didn't even allow herself to like sex, or at least she didn't show it. But holy shit, she was an outstanding lady. She was like a stallion. I've been going through a bunch of old photos and books since my mother's death, and I've come across pictures of my grandmother in her prime. We used to have a portrait of her a painting portrait of her up in our living room, and she was a goddess. She wasn't even a 10. It went to 11 for her, and not in a sexy way, since sexy didn't exist in fucking BC. She was just, you get the idea. She was a woman of women, but unfortunately you don't get to be that without being at least a little cunty most of the time. So you take that woman and give her not only a bodily dependence on alcohol and later on an obvious addiction to tobacco, but an adopted sociopathic teenager who's just generally predisposed to fuck shit up in her life. That's just her OS. You got to look at who built her. You know, we aren't just blank slates at birth who who we are is woven into our DNA from birth. You can't bend a human being so much. You can only bend a human being so much without going to extremely inhumane measures. Not that Shelley did that, but that's what it would have taken to keep my mom from being my mom. I do believe, however, that it's up to the parent to at least somewhat adapt to their child before trying to bend them. Like how are you going to take somebody out of a room without going into it, you know? Without completely destroying and tearing down the room as a whole, which would be the inhumane measures. Well, you get the person to trust you, and at least enough to let you in. Now, whether that means genuinely loving them as if they were your own blood or just manipulating them into believing that that's the case for as long as they need that sense of love and security, I don't think it matters. All that matters is that you provide that single thing for the child. My grandmother did not do that thing. My grandmother, with all due respect to her as a person, failed as a mother, from my understanding anyway. From what I heard from my mother, she had a responsibility to teach a sociopathic girl what it means to truly love, and how to give it, and how to teach it. And instead, she displayed that love by giving my mom expensive objects and money and that kind of stuff. But it's funny because that very thing ended up patching up their relationship just before Shelley's death. My mom had her cancer, and Darren, my stepfather, who was doing his usual thing, taking all of my mom's meds and spending everything we had on crack, and then sneaking into our rooms at night to steal our belongings and buy more crack. And then once he did that, once he didn't have objects, he'd sell his body, etc. So he wasn't very around. But my grandmother stepped in and carried my mom on her back financially, even though we were on a different side of the country. Completely through the chemotherapy, all of the meds, even what we had to, even though we had to reimburse a lot of them, you know, what had to be replaced. She kept food in the house, everything, and that promptly allowed my mother to open up and talk to her again. And then shortly thereafter, it led to my mom being able to fully open up and clear everything off her slate while Shelley lied on her deathbed in 2009. And they got to properly say goodbye before my grandma departed. And so it's kind of poetic to me how the thing that caused so many problems between them ended up fixing those problems, even if it took 30 years. So that was her mother. Her father, however, my grandfather Larry, he was and still is awesome. One of the coolest dudes I've ever met, definitely. I'm